Okay. So I don't fully know what I'm going to talk about tonight, which means it's probably going to be a great talk. The last week I was gone. You guys did a long meditation, right? Mr. Roach, did you lead that class?
Yes, sir.
Everyone sat still?
Yes, sir.
Great. So this is going to be a regular one. I'm talking about, it's kind of similar to what I wrote about in the newsletter for the blog, and then some other stuff too, just kind of thrown in there. But last week I was in Switzerland, and it's beautiful. Who's been to Switzerland before? Nobody? You've been to Switzerland before? Would you think I was asking for you to just stare at me? Who's been to Switzerland? Blank stare. It's beautiful. It is where I was is possibly the most beautiful place that I've ever been in my life. I started off in a little town called Lauterbrunnen, and it was basically like a valley surrounded by these super dramatic cliffs and mountains, and there were like 100 little waterfalls coming down off of the mountainside, and it was absolutely beautiful. And on the second day, we went to Matterhorn, and I'm sure some people hike up, but it's like a ridiculous hike. It probably takes like multiple days. So we just got in a gondola and took the gondola up, and it's a really long ride and very cool. It was unfortunately overcast for most of that day, but we got a few pockets of really nice weather. We could see everything, and it looks kind of similar to the ride at Disneyland, except when there's no snow on it, it actually looks a little bit less dramatic and interesting. But you have to go to Matterhorn if you're in Switzerland. It's silly not to go. We're only like an hour away, so we went. So we're going up there, and it's freezing cold, and we're at 9,000 feet. I'm there with my family, and my aunt just desperately wants a picture of herself up at the top. You're at a observation deck, which is like just below the peak, and you're kind of looking out at the peak of Matterhorn. Well, it was overcast at this time, so we were basically inside a cloud, and all you could see was just white, 360 degrees of cloud. But she insisted, and I'm opening the door, and I have actual video of this because I was videotaping with my camera right there, and I have this video of me saying, I don't want to go out there, it's too cold. And she's saying, come on. And I'm like, okay. And so I run out, and I'm not wearing the right shoes. And I kind of slip with my one foot because it's ice basically. And my other foot catches, and I go down, hard sprain. I thought that I broke my ankle. It made the loudest, most unsatisfying pop. And I was down on the ground, and I'm basically swearing like on my way down and as loud as I can for everyone in Switzerland to hear. And I was sure that I broke my ankle, and I just immediately started thinking, oh my God, am I going to be stuck out here on Matterhorn in sub-freezing weather with a broken ankle while they like try to give me medical care? And I think, no. So I just crawl back to the elevator on my hands and knees, and I make it inside, and we're going down, and I'm kind of like getting my wits about me, and I'm thinking, well, my ankle's broken. This is what I'm thinking at this point, and it's very painful, but I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to go, and maybe I'll get somebody to fix me up down at the bottom. So I'm thinking right now I just got to breathe through it. So I start breathing really deeply, and we're at elevation, and so this doesn't work out for me either, and I actually start getting kind of faint, and I half faint in the elevator. And this is all very embarrassing. If I felt the emotion of embarrassment, I'm sure I would have been mortified, but there are people like trying to help me stay up on my feet and stuff. And 30 seconds later, I was totally fine. I got my breath, and I realized I kind of like moved my ankle around, and I thought, oh, I'm fine. I've had a sprain before. This is not that bad. And then I just rode the gondola all the way back down with my ankle up on the top of the seat. And really spent the rest of the trip getting lots of attention from my family and everybody else. I got these sweet crutches that I was walking around with. I actually got a discount getting into this museum because I think they thought that I had some kind of serious disability, and they gave me money off, and so it was like kind of a generally really nice experience. And that happened on the second day of my trip, and I had like 5 or 6 days left, and I got sick a couple of days after that. And so the last half of the trip really was quite brutal for pretty much anybody. And my life is all just roses. You know, I get to do exactly what I love to do, and things generally go pretty easy for me. So when I get sick, or when I have an injury, and God forbid, if I have both at the same time, I like to milk it. I mean, I like to complain as much as I can. I like to have everybody around me like really feel sorry for me. But after the first day, I realized that this is just not the way that I want to spend my trip in Switzerland, or I don't want to make, my family just kind of take care of me and worry about me the whole time. So at some point I started just realizing, like, okay, this is where my mind is going. My mind is going to, I am in pain and I can't walk right now, and that sucks. I'm in a foreign country, and most of this trip was just going up and down hills, like climbing stuff and descending stuff. And that's not fun when you have a broken ankle and when you can't really breathe very well. And so I caught my mind going to that, like, woe is me kind of mindset. And I decided, well, that's not how I'm going to spend this trip. So then I immediately started thinking about something nice. It's beautiful here. My family is here and they're taking care of me. And it was like my brother and I have an interesting relationship. We spent most of our lives just hating each other. And it wasn't until more recently he actually came in and was a student for a while, and we kind of grew up out of it. It wasn't really until the last few years that we really started to actually like each other. And still, when we travel, I don't know if you guys ever have this experience, but when you're spending time with your family in close proximity, stuff starts to be terrible. You push each other's buttons, and you just start to go back to the way that you were. And for me and my brother, it's like we get sucked back into the way that we were when we were kids, just like pissing each other off. And as soon as I sprained my ankle, he came over and he was helping me up and had me I was putting my weight on him and hobbling over. And it was honestly the sweetest that he has ever been to me, I think, in my entire life. So that was something else that I would think about. I'm kind of hobbling through the streets of the city that we're visiting. The next place we went to was Lucerne, which is just one of the most beautiful cities in the world. All these beautiful old buildings and very cool, and everything is still kind of like this in cobblestone, and so that's where I got my crutches, and I really started to zoom around. But my brother was taking care of me the whole time, and that was a really nice thing for me to be able to focus on. Half the time he's being really annoying and pissing me off on purpose, and the other half the time he's being really nice and sweet. So I just focus on the nice part of it. And this made me remember just another thing that I'm really grateful for, which is my practice. And even though my practice wasn't enough apparently to not allow me to slip and twist my ankle, it was enough to be in what all things being, all told, this was still a great trip. I was still in a foreign country surrounded by beauty and people who love me and all that stuff. But for me in my super cushy life, it was still kind of a terrible experience. And so I was just able to focus on, thanks to my practice, all the good stuff that's happening, and just basically when the bad stuff creeps into my head, just kind of let it go. And whether your life is super cushy and nice and everything goes well all the time, or your life is really rough and you're living in poverty, or you have no health and everything is really rough, all human beings have a tendency to focus on the negative stuff. It's what we are evolved to do. And this is because when you're out there in the world, if you're trying to stay alive, you need to be able to recognize the stuff that's a danger. All the negative stuff, whether it's a lion trying to eat you, or making sure that you're not eating poisonous food, or the car that's about to hit you, or whatever it is. Like, that's the stuff that your mind needs to focus on a survival level. So it's great, it's healthy that your mind does that. But then what we do is we just let that be the only thing that we think about. And it's not very long until pretty much all you're thinking about is negative stuff. And you will always be able to find negative stuff. Not to keep harping on my brother, but he was on the same trip as me, and he did not have a busted ankle, nor was he sick, but he still found plenty of stuff to complain about. And this is just the way that we kind of naturally end up being. So I just remembered kind of like early on in my practice, I was the same way. I was negative all the time. And Sifu Brown at one point early on said, happiness is a choice. And he gave a whole talk about it. And I really took that to heart. And I was 17, 18 years old when I heard this. And I realized happiness is a choice. I have not been choosing that. I've been choosing the other stuff. And that's like really empowering and really kind of a nice thing to be able to choose. And you get to choose your mental state and your emotional state whenever you want to. And I realized that is not what I have been doing, and I'm not good at it. I would sometimes early on in my practice, I would get happiness as a choice, and then I would start to kind of beat myself up. How come you're not choosing to be happy? What's wrong with you? And that doesn't work. That's like the stupidest thing that you can do, which is have an unhappy thought, recognize that you're choosing to have that thought, and then get pissed off at yourself for having the unhappy thought, and that's just a never-ending cycle of spiraling into depression. So I would recognize that, and I would think, it's okay, like I'm not supposed to be perfect yet, so let's just find something to be happy about right now. Yeah, I could focus on my bum leg, or I could focus on how beautiful of a day it is. I could focus on how I'm sick, or I could focus on this delicious meal that I'm having right now. And from early on in my practice, I just decided I'm going to stop thinking about this stuff as often. I'm going to just let it go and kind of pivot to something that I do want to think about, something that I want to be grateful for, something that is there to celebrate. And it was years of training and years of rewiring my brain and my thoughts and my consciousness, and now it becomes the automatic at least second thought that I have. And some of you guys were here when I gave this talk probably a year ago about the second thought. So the first thought, for most of us, even with lots of training, remains kind of this negative thing that you're focusing on. But your second thought can be, wait a minute, I don't want to think about that, I want to think about something else instead. And this is very different from repressing. I'm not interested in doing that. If there's something that needs to be fixed, I fix it. For example, you guys can see my ankle is wrapped. And this is not like I sprained my ankle and I pretend that it didn't happen, and so I keep walking around normally until I break myself. I realize, okay, this is something that needs to be fixed, so I fix it. I wrap it up and I walk carefully on it. Sometimes in class I haven't been as careful as I should be, but I'm still more or less taking care of it. I could choose to spend all day thinking about this, but instead I recognize, okay, my second thought goes, I don't want to be thinking about this all day long, so what do I want to be thinking about? Something else. And it's just kind of like, the analogy that I use is you're going down this road, this path, and you're in a wagon, and your wagon gets stuck in these ruts that you've created with the previous times that you've gone down this path. And maybe, you've really worn these ruts in quite deep. And what it takes to get yourself out of those ruts is a real hard turn. So you're in a car or a wagon or whatever, you turn the horse, you turn the wheel, and it kind of gets you to jump out of that. And now you're on a new path, and it's exciting and different and new, and maybe you're just out going through a field and you don't know where you're going to be going, but it's something else at least. And that is the way that our minds work. What we train them to do, what we train our mind and our brain to do, becomes very easy. It becomes not even easy, it becomes automatic. And it doesn't take long until we're left with these habitual thoughts, these habitual actions that we're not doing consciously and we don't really want to be doing. So it can take something. It can take like kind of a violent action to get you out of that. But this is what is possible for us, is to first recognize, I'm going down this same path, I'm stuck in these same ruts, this is the stuff that I've been thinking about for my entire life, and I'm not feeling it today, I don't want to do that right now. I want to choose something else. And you need to make a hard turn, jump out of that, get out of that groove, and then start heading down somewhere else. And it's going to take many times of that hard turn until you make a new groove. And now you've got this other path that you've chosen. And then once you get into this other path, it's easy because you've created it with all of the other times that you have had this line of thinking, that you have recognized that you don't want to go over here, so you make that turn. And it starts with meditation, it starts with introspection, it starts with awareness. So this is a big part of what our meditation practice is for. It's really nice to be in the moment and sit and be calm and be peaceful and to create the kind of consciousness, the kind of awareness that we want in this moment. But it should also be something that we can take out into everyday life. It should be something that we're able to use to be aware in the moment of the thought that we're having, even when we're not sitting and meditating. So then we get to choose. Okay, I recognize this. It's something that I'm aware that I don't want to have. And so then I'm able to decide to turn. The story that I told in the newsletter, another story was from Jay LeBlanc, and he told this on retreat. This is my plug for Internal Retreat. Internal Retreat is coming up in a couple of weeks, October 18th. And this was a story that he told about a different internal retreat. This is not what we are going to do in this retreat. And I tell you this because when you hear this story, you're going to think, that sounds terrible. And it did. In fact, I wasn't even on this retreat. This was on a year that I had a wedding or something and I could not go. But I heard about it because this is the one that everybody talks about because of how harrowing it was. But Sifu Brown used to tell this story all the time about this monk who was in training, who was told every day, basically to build up discipline, you're going to take the rocks from this pile and move them across the field to another pile over there. You move all of these rocks from here to there. You wake up the next day, you move those rocks from that pile back over to that pile. And it serves no purpose whatsoever other than what you're getting out of it internally. The discipline that you're building up. And so Sifu Brown thought, this is going to make a great retreat. So this is what he had all of the students do. And he would go through and ring the bell and wake everybody up at 2 a.m. and they get out of bed and they're like, what are we doing right now? And you go outside and you see this pile of rocks. And so you move the rocks from this pile, and some of them are like big, almost boulders, and you kind of like carry them slowly to the other side and you set them down. And then you walk back over and keep doing it again. And everybody's moving rocks until this huge pile goes from here to over there. Go back to sleep. And then get woken up again and do it all over again. And they did this several times, and Mr. LeBlanc was very frank in telling this story. He said, like, by the third time, I was pissed off. I did not want to move the rocks. I hated the rocks. I hated the grass, I hated the sky, I hated Sifu, I hated everybody. And he was moving this rock, and he was kind of walking back, and he saw one of the other students, Kina, carrying her rock with just a huge smile on her face, just walking down and like really enjoying it. And he had this realization in that moment that it's possible for her to be happy moving this rock at this ungodly hour after having done it so many times. It must be possible for me to be happy doing the same thing. And that means on some level that I'm choosing to be this way that I am now, but I could be choosing to be this other way. And so in that moment, he was able to recognize that and flip it around and choose to be happy moving the rocks. And that is a very simple story with huge implications for the rest of your life, because there are so many things. I mean, for a lot of people, that is like most of what life seems like is this pointless exercise in futility. You know, every day is something like moving the rocks from this pile to here, and then again from that pile to over there the next day. It's like, you know, we feel like we're just kind of treading water and just, you know, what is the point of all of it? And some of it is painful. And yet you can choose in that moment to be the way that you want to be. And sometimes it is actually these, you know, these really rough experiences that bring that out of us and really solidify it. And it becomes something in that moment that has stuck in your psyche so strongly that you get back to it really easily. That kind of experience is kind of like one of those hard turns that you made, that then you're starting to create this new pathway in your mind of these thoughts. And so this is what our practice is for on some level. This is what meditation is for. This is what internal retreat is for. And when we create these experiences and these memories, we are kind of creating this new path that we get to go on. And it is worth whatever kind of hardship, whatever kind of, you know, rough experience we went through. In fact, it's really necessary to have that. So you'll find yourself oftentimes in practice, like in class, having a really rough class. It's way over my head, I'm so confused, I don't know what I'm doing. Or you're taking a test and it's super difficult and you're just thinking, I cannot possibly do one more rep of this technique or this form. And you see yourself there, and then you get it in that moment at least. I'm going to choose to keep going. I'm going to choose to be this way. I'm going to choose to put a smile on my face, even though it's the last thing that I want to do right now. I'm going to do it. And from then on, everything else, you know, in that test, during that day, during that class, and possibly for the rest of that week or month or year, or possibly for the rest of your life, has turned. And it's beautiful. It's profound, it's lasting, and this is really what we're here for. So sometimes you want to seek those experiences out. You're purposefully going to put yourself in those situations, and sometimes you're not going to do it on purpose. I'm going to put you there, and sometimes life is just going to put you there. But it's great. This is what life and practice is all about. So that being said, let's sit. Okay.